That must be the ambassador's theme song. That's what Billy Crystal calls the white man's overbite.
True.
It's a great pleasure to have these two people on stage with us tonight to talk about economic relationships, the future of Canada and the United States economically, and given the changes that we've all been witness to here in the last 24 hours. Mr. Ambassador, it will never leave this room. What was the message? It'll never leave this room.
Okay.
What did you tell the Prime Minister the morning after the election about what was going on in the United States?
I think he watched it very carefully himself. So obviously he knows very well the U.S. Political system, and he knows that on Wednesday morning the president is still the president of the United States. He knows that the House is still in the control of the Republicans, and we were very aware that the speakership of the Senate would change with Harry Reid being replaced by Mitch McConnell. And for Canada, what that meant was we probably will have a trade promotion authority bill before the Senate sometime early in 2015, which we need as part of the TPP negotiations and trade. It may mean more compromise where we get an energy efficiency bill that Jean Chrétien and Portman were proposing, along with an amendment on KXL, so there's energy efficiency for cleaner air and energy reliability with Keystone, and that there's going to be some reductions perhaps in taxes, and we've got to keep, as Minister Oliver said, we're going to keep our feet moving to keep competitive with the United States and make sure our great soups are consumed by our consumers. So that's what we're going to do, and I'm a consumer.
So when the American corporate tax rate goes down, as I expect that it will in the next couple of years, they're going to have to find something to do with that. There's a big piece of job creation in the United States. But what does that do to countries like Canada, who have had most recently the very high profile of Tim Horton takeover by Warren Buffett and moving things here in tax inversion? By the way, I'm a huge fan of Tim Horton. I think that I really am. I love going there for breakfast in all the small towns across Canada, because it's not just a great breakfast, it's the community social center.
Yes, sir.
You can find out what's going on.
Yes.
And you got the conservatives one side and the liberals on the other side. You got the working class. They're all there at Tim Hortons, and they just don't hold up when they move to New York. You really have to do it, in the outlying places in Newfoundland, and then you get a real sense of it. But back to the question, will it have any impact on Americans coming to Canada and relocating?
It shows you how you have to get publicity in the United States and get their attention. You can have all the debates and presentations about having a lower corporate tax. You can do it day after day after day, but you get a great coffee franchise and a great burger joint franchise coming together, and everybody knows about it. So people say, oh, are you worried about it? I said, well, thank goodness we finally have a symbol of the reality that we have a lower corporate tax, and Canada will stay competitive. We will we have a cooperative relationship. We're allies around the world, but we're competitors. We're going to stay agile. We're going to keep moving. We're not going to keep our feet still. And I think that the U.S. will have to reduce their taxes about 9% or 10% with the corporate tax in Canada, both provincial and federal. But there's other ways we have to compete. We have to keep investing in education and training, in the knowledge economy. For startups in the knowledge economy, we still have a very attractive tax rate. So we're glad we got that publicity with the burger coffee merger that took place.
A friend of mine who's on that board said it's now, I think, the largest chain restaurant in the world that they've putting the two of them together, Burger King and Tim Horton, which is a big statement in and of itself. Did the election results have any impact on long-range planning, the Campbell Soup Company, which has a big presence here in Canada? You have a plant here, and your sales have stayed up in Canada.
Yes. Well, I think the main thing with this election is I'm hoping on both sides of the aisle we get people that are much more collaborative, that can meet in the middle. I think what's happened, particularly in the Congress, is this really bifurcation. And the issues are really daunting. I mean, you talk about corporate tax reform and immigration reform and education reform, to name three. We need people that are going to collaborate and get things done. And so I'm hoping that the interpretation of the election results will be just that, that we want people in our legislature that are going to make laws and get things done. And that will have an impact on the United States, and it will have an impact on Canada.
You told me something surprising at dinner tonight. We all think of Campbell's Soup Company as soup. I mean, I went to college in cream of chicken soup and bean soup in the evening. And I still think of you, I know that you have other products, but soup now represents what percent?
Soup is 32% of our sales and 48% of our profits. Wow. And we have Pepperidge Farm. We have over $2 billion in biscuit and snacks between Pepperidge Farm and Arnott's in Australia. We, in the last 3 years, have made 3 acquisitions, Bolthouse Farms, so we're one of the largest carrot suppliers in the United States, and we make super premium fresh beverages and salad dressing. We bought Plum Organic baby food to teach baby and train their palates to love kale. And we bought the Kelsen business, which is a Danish butter cookie business with 40% of the sales in China. So what I've been doing over the past 3 years with the Campbell team is reshaping our portfolio, not only for the wonderful generation that grew up with our products, but for the next generation that's looking for both our core products and then some new things too.
You've done a remarkable job of turning the company around and reshaping it. And you were losing market share on the soup line in the United States. But here in Canada, it was staying really steady. Why is that?
I think the Canadian team has been a model for Campbell's of innovation and entrepreneurial spirit. In fact, a lot of the talent that is running our United States businesses today come from Canada because of that background. And I believe that the Canadian team has been able to really put the consumer first and innovate and deliver for that consumer. And the United States is now doing that too, but Canada has consistently done it.
Mr. Ambassador, I know that the Director of Homeland Security for the United States was just in Canada after your tragic shooting in Ottawa. Are you spending more time on that issue and the obviously kind of drill down impact that can have, not just on national security, but on politics and on the economy, if people begin to feel a sense of terror because you have been identified by name by ISIS jihadists?
Well, we've had the threats from Al-Qaeda in the past. Of course, this was highly visible and tragic killings with the terrorists that took place in Canada just a couple of weeks ago. One of the biggest jobs we had was dealing with the media. The media was generally extremely respectful and had a great deal of integrity in the U.S. It had a tremendous integrity in terms of the resiliency we saw here in Canada, the bravery and understated skill of the Sergeant of Arms who was covered a lot in American television, the statement of our resolve by our Prime Minister. Where we were worried is these panels that develop in the United States, and people will say things, most of which is true, but sometimes it's not true. And so we've been watching every newscast and trying to identify, detect, and correct statements. We had a panelist say that these 2 individuals could have come into Canada lawfully and represented a threat to American citizens. And of course, we want to be more aggressive because it was an urban myth that developed after 9/11 that the terrorists came through Canada, which of course was factually not true. There never has been a terrorist attack in the United States that came from Canada. And we wanted to correct the fact that this person said they could lawfully come through. They both didn't have passports. And I think it's our job to be very sure of that. On the issue of domestic terrorist threats, we've got the example just recently where 2 alleged terrorists from Canada and 1 alleged terrorist in New York were arrested on the same day, 1 in New York and 2 in Canada, with great cooperation with the FBI and the RCMP. We are working together to keep our neighborhoods safe. But ever since the Fort Hood shooting and killing of 13 people from a domestic psychiatrist on that base, we have discussed with Janet Napolitano and now Secretary Johnson this issue of how best to deal with radicalized individuals before they commit acts of terror in our own country or try to be a terrorist in another country and try to return back to our country.
Let me ask you about a couple of other common problems. As you know, immigration is a hot button issue in America. I got an earful today from the driver driving over here about immigration coming into this country and the impact that it's having on what you would call the cultural integrity, I suppose, of Canada, and then finding jobs and then educating them and the cost to it. How much of it is an issue here for the economy, immigration into Canada?
Well, Canada has 2/3 of our immigration people are skilled and 1/3 family, and really not very many that are undocumented. The United States has 2/3 family, 1/3 skilled. And I know as a former premier, I used to go to places like Stanford and all those students that you would pay for to graduate with all those skills and knowledge and technology. And we would go there with our binoculars and swoop them up and take them up to Canada because you were going to send them back to wherever they came from.
China and Korea.
Perhaps, yes, and India. So now Orrin Hatch heard about this and put it in the new immigration proposal that is languished in the Senate and was never taken up in the House. So he was quoting from Canadian press releases about our visa, our aggressive attitude towards the knowledge economy and trying to attract people. If you don't want them and they're skilled and knowledgeable, they got a place in Canada. Believe me.
Debbie, we were talking beforehand, we were talking about the enormous impact that Canadian entertainers have had in America. But you told me, to your surprise, and certainly to mine, talk about some of your senior executives who are in key jobs who came from the north to the south.
Yeah. Well, for example, our new president of Canada is Anna Dominguez, and she's with us tonight. And our president of Pepperidge Farm, Irene Chang-Britt, is from Canada, actually from Toronto. Mark Alexander is president of Campbell North America, and he is Canadian. And our head of innovation, Darren Sarau, is Canadian. So this is, and you know what? I never ever thought about it. It was one of those things like go for the best athlete, and you know, and we have some great leaders from the United States and around the world as well. But I never really thought about it, and that's probably good.
Let me ask you about your new product line. You talked about Pepperidge Farm and the other baby products and so on that you're doing. The basic line is still soup. It's what, 48% of your profits come from soup?
Soup and simple meals, yeah.
How do you keep pace with the millennials? How do you keep pace with the foodies who are coming of age when they get anything they want in any city in the country now? I mean, you can't go into an American town of any size and not get a great meal. And it's driven a lot generationally.
Mm-hmm. There is definitely a generation shift going on in the United States where you have 80 million baby boomers, and then the millennials are also 80 million strong, and they spend $1.3 trillion. So they are a definite cohort. And then they're probably the most diverse generation that the country has ever seen. And I think the other demographic shift that we have observed is a change in the family. Only 24% of families in the United States are mom, dad, and 2 kids. Families now are multi-generational, multicultural, single moms, adult only. The mosaic of the family has changed. And what you find is people are eating differently, shopping differently, and especially the millennials are much better traveled, have much more global taste adventure. And so a company like mine has to put the consumer first. And we spend an enormous amount of time with millennials. Our people shopped with them, cooked with them, ate with them, even went to pop-up bars with them, and I couldn't get them to come back to work. They were having so much fun.
I'd like to see those expense accounts.
Yeah. But you know what? It's all about getting insights and then translating them into different kinds of products. So for example, the past couple of years, we've introduced new Campbell's dinner sauces, which are skillet, slow cooker sauces, and oven sauces. And they're easy to make, 30-minute prep, little cleanup, and they're delicious, and you can take a picture of them and put them on Facebook. And so it really struck a chord with this next generation. So I think it's about, not being afraid of it, but being in touch with it.
Canada has been rock solid for you for a long time as a market. What about China?
We went into China with a joint venture on our soup business with Swire Pacific. And in the last year, we bought the Kelsen business, which is a Danish butter cookie business. 40% of the sales are in China. And we have people we have a pretty established business in Hong Kong, but we're building China. And we recognize that's going to take us some time, but we're pretty pleased with the progress. And it's an enormous market. It really is.
And will grow for you only. You don't have a plant there.
We do not have a plant in operations there.
But as a market.
What we'll do, though, is we'll go in and we'll build the market via export, and then as the products grow and take hold with the consumer, then you have enough scale to build a plant and operations and make money.
Mr. Ambassador, as you look at the global economy and the place of Canada in it, what worries you the most? Is it China?
I think we start with ourselves and with our relationship with the United States. A lot of people in the United States, if you were to take polls and market surveys, would believe that China is the United States' largest customer. And the reality is we talk about trade relationships and trade numbers, but Canada, as the minister said before, Canada is the largest customer of U.S. goods and services. We buy more goods and services from the United States than the whole European put together. And in terms of China, that is perceived to be larger, they're less than 50% buying U.S. goods, and they're selling 3 times more goods to the U.S. than they're buying. So we have a challenge to maintain the supply chain and try to ensure that we don't have protectionist behavior on either side of the border. We're always dealing with proposals to put up walls instead of, and of course you were there taking down the wall, or part of taking down the wall. We want to keep the walls going down. We want the regulations to be more in line so Campbell's Soup won't have difficulty getting products back and forth. And we have to do it not as, oh, we're just friends and neighbors and nice people and we have a great trading relationship. When you say that in the Congress, they believe the United States is buying and you're selling. You've got to clearly articulate the fact, no, we're buying. We're your biggest customer. And like business, we want to be treated that way. And we can enhance this business and this relationship by ensuring that we don't have speed bumps or protectionist behavior, or worse than that, walls between our two countries.
It will create jobs for both countries.
Yes, that's exactly right.
You talked a lot about watching television very carefully after the Ottawa situation.
Yes.
I'm not asking you who you watched.
Oh, I watched Morning Joe, and I saw you on there 2 days ago.
In fact, you need to put soup on the grocery list.
Right. And you didn't see my phone incident, so that was the other thing that worried me. But as you watched during the Ebola crisis and the reaction to it, and it went to media DEFCON 1 almost instantly, were there lessons in that for Canada?
Well, we had been working with the White House, with the disease lab in Atlanta, and the public health agency here before it became a big issue in the American media, and well, in the world media, but mostly in the American media. We had meetings with Minister Ambrose, and Secretary Burrell. We had been working together on vaccines that are now being tested in the Walter Reed Army Hospital in Washington. What happened in the United States when you say everything's under control and it doesn't look like it's under control with what happened in Dallas, you then have a lot of questions about, are we safe? Can we believe what we've been told? What's going to come next? We hadn't had a case yet in Canada, but we are not presuming anything about that. But I would say with working with the United States, we're probably 90% aligned working together with the United States on Ebola. And we all know that volunteers that go to to the West African countries, they have to be guaranteed a return if they get diagnosed with Ebola, a quick return to our healthcare systems, either in Canada or the United States. And we work with the United States in that regard as well.
I'm on the board of the Mayo Clinic Public Trustees, and we've had to have an enormously expensive kind of reconstruction of isolation units and preparing for it. Best healthcare system maybe in the world. Got hundreds of people working on this. The Canadian healthcare system having to build isolation units and think more carefully and make a greater investment, frankly, in what probably is a very remote possibility of Ebola coming here and becoming a national threat.
Well, we have that capacity in Canada, and we learned some lessons on command and control on public health with some of the SARS events that took place. I would say the challenge for Canada and the United States, if you want people to go, and Ambassador Heyman is here and he's working with us very carefully as a U.S. ambassador here in Ottawa, if you want our medical professionals to go to contain the disease where it is taking place, you've got to have the capacity to begin with to get them back with the kind of protections in an aircraft or in an aircraft to get them back to the Canadian or American healthcare system. Professionals will go as long as they know they're going to be backed up, and that's what we've been working on with the United States a lot.
Has that had any effect on your workforce and the regs that you have and the preparation that you have for, you have a big workforce obviously, and how much of a concern was it for them when Ebola flooded the screens for that period of time?
While the workforce and the professionals had been discussing the incidents of potential incidents well before the media coverage of the Dallas patient that wasn't diagnosed properly at the front end. And they had been dealing with the protocols and the procedures, and the health ministers had been discussing this, and the professional public health people had been discussing it before the incident took place. And I know the White House was very concerned about it before the incident in Dallas, which of course raised the alarm bells in the United States and the media coverage about what is the command and control. The procedures that we were promised, are they going to be there? So very much we've been working ahead of time. We haven't been tested yet like the U.S. has, but we certainly have been dealing with the protocols well in advance.
Debbie, there's a big debate in America about the millennials and those who are highly educated and those who are not having the skill set to fit in to the new economy. Much more automation going on now. You've changed manufacturing in America by 180 degrees in the last 10 years or so. What's been the impact on Campbell's Soup, where I know you're doing a lot more automation and it's a lot more modern than it was in the old days, in terms of finding the kind of people who can do those jobs and feel confident that they'll have a job at Campbell's Soup?
There's a couple of ways that manifests itself. First of all, in the manufacturing facilities, we have automated significantly in many of the plants that make our products. But we also have a very long tenured workforce that we train to operate the new automation. And so we do believe that if you've got good people, you can teach them new things. And so that's been very successful. I think one of the things that I'm observing, though, is just the power of the digital shift that's going on and the new skills and competencies that are going to be required in a number of different areas. Because even when it comes to marketing and advertising, it no longer, you sit in a room full of millennials and you say, how many of you watch TV? And nobody's hand goes up. And then but they're all connected online. Maybe they're on multiple devices at the same time. So what we're saying is it's not about advertising anymore. It's about content for multiple screen sizes, anywhere from the smartphone all the way up to the big screen and everything in between. And so it is really changing the way our workforce has originally been trained to adjust to this new world of connection with consumers. And so, but I say bring it on. I think it's a very, very exciting frontier. This is definitely a digital revolution.
In the digital revolution, apart from the parts that you put on cable television and on the screens, how do you use social media to advance the best interest of Campbell Soup and reach the millennial generation?
Oh, well, I'll give the example of our Swanson broth brand, which is very successful, and it operates on the inside of Why I Cook. So we have many, many recipes that, as we've taken Swanson broth from vegetable, beef, and chicken all the way into flavor, and have different things that people can make with the product, we have absolutely blown that out in social media and digital. And we're engaging consumers, we're getting their ideas, we're having conversations with them. That's one example. But we actually, probably about 25% of our spending is in the social media space now.
And you have generations of workers, I mean, you have lifers who have been at Campbell Soup forever. Do their grandchildren arrive expecting to be a lifer, or do they hit and run?
We have in some of our facilities 3 generations in the same facility. I mean, you can, and they all claim they have the best job in the company, which is great. But I do think that workforces today are more diverse, and getting people to align on values and our leadership model and our company purpose brings people together. And I think that creates the engagement that you need to really be a high-performance company.
The young workers have the same ethic as their grandparents in terms of showing up, doing a good job, and being proud of it?
Yeah.
You allow them to carry their BlackBerry or their iPhone onto the work floor?
Yeah. Well, actually, we're pretty strict of what you can't even wear jewelry in the plants, that's for sure. Because you're working with food, so.
Well, we can't text and drive. Can we text and make Campbell's Soup at the same time?
Yes, as a matter of fact, the smart kitchen is coming, right?
Let me ask you both something that is on the minds, I think, of a lot of people these days. Are you confident that America is still the place where the American dream can be realized? That in Canada, that you can come here and have the realization of the protection of law, democracy, and the great values that this country represents? Or has that been diminished some, do you think, in the last few years? Some people in the United States, you'll hear this every decade or say, we're not the same country we used to be. Here you are, a graduate of Boston College, you've been in the food industry forever, you've been enormously successful. What's your judgment about the future?
I think that America continues to be a land of opportunity, and what really jazzes me is again the entrepreneurial spirit of our people, and believe me, the country has I think one of the finest educational systems. I think that if people are really motivated, they can do anything. I mean, you go to places like California, and I think about Neil Grimmer, who is the founder of Plum Organics. He and his wife were making baby food by hand, and it was taking them hours. And he said, there's got to be a better way. So he starts a company, and then I buy it. The point is that this is going on all over the place. So I think it manifests itself in a different way, but still that spirit is there for people who want to take it.
With all that's going on in the world, Mr. Ambassador, with the meltdown in too many parts of Africa, with the rise of China, with a renewed sense of nationalism going on in Russia for now, led by Putin, obviously, with the Middle East, which is at the moment in a rage of jihadism. And it's very hard to see how there's not going to be any surrender ceremony on the Missouri in this fight. Yeah. It's not going to happen that way. Do you still have confidence that the industrial and democratic West will be preeminent at the end of the century as it has been at the beginning?
I do have faith that it will remain preeminent. I think it will be joined by other countries that have the innovation, the education, the creativity, the recognition of that creativity. I don't believe it's going to stay static. I would say the challenge for those of us who believe that we have the best quality of life and opportunity of life in this neighborhood of North America and in this neighborhood of Canada, United States, we can't stand still for one moment, starting with the first grade of education, all the way through our education systems, our post-secondary education systems, adapting to some of the models in Europe on increasing the efficacy and prestige of skilled training as a noble profession, taking advantage of the, we're slowly working on catching up on patents. The U.S. has the most patents per capita of any country in the world. We're doing well on stage 1 here in Canada, stage 2, but when it gets to stage 3, we got a little more work to do. But you can't stand still. You can't, for a moment, just say everything's fine. You just got to keep moving forward. And I really believe education, training, creativity, patents, adaptation to markets, innovation. It's an overused term. But if we stand still, people are going to walk all over us at the turn of the century. And we have never stood still in Canada, and the Americans have never stood still.
Well, the great enduring mantra of Silicon Valley is be disruptive.
Yes.
Find new ways to do things.
Yes.
Be unconventional. And they've exceeded beyond their expectations. I mean, it's a technological revolution the likes of the world has never seen, and we're just at the beginning of it.